Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I'm Dr. Shrabani Basu, Assistant Professor in the Department of English in St. Francis College for Women, Hyderabad. The lesson that we would be looking through today is particularly on the celebrated West Indian playwright Derek Walcott, and particularly on one of his plays which gained international acclaim and has been a part of many university curriculum currently, Dream on Monkey Mountain. Now, this lesson is a part of the paper, The Caribbean and African Writing in English. Now, when we are looking at Derek Walcott, we need to know a little about Walcott to posit him in the socio-cultural phenomena so that we understand his working better. Now, Dream on Monkey Mountain was first published in 1970, and the collection that it was a part of was called Dream on Monkey Mountain and Other Plays. Now, Walcott himself wrote a prologue for this edition of the plays and named it What the Twilight Says, an overture. Now, it is important that we look at this overture because in this, he explores the hybrid individual and especially the hybrid playwright who is looking for the issues of identity, indigeneity, national and cultural selfhood in a very multicultural and colorful context of the Caribbeans. And in this play particularly, Walcott looks at the hybrid individual, the mulatto of interracial parentage, searching in vain for his roots and his sense of identity and purpose in life. Is it really does it really make sense when the individual looks for his identity? That is one of the questions that Walcott asks in Dream on Monkey Mountain. Now, if we look at Derek Walcott's life, he was born in St. Lucia in 1930, but he moved to Trinidad in 1953, where he initially worked as a theatre and art critic. Now, just by the way of trivia, it's important to note that Walcott initially in his youth actually trained to be a painter under the tutelage of Harold Simmons. Now, very importantly, in 1992, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Now, if we look at Dream on Monkey Mountain as a part of the greater Walcott oeuvre, then in that same collection, there has been many other plays which did not, unfortunately, gain as much acclaim, celebration, or recognition as Dream on Monkey Mountain, but they were The Sea at Dauphin, Tijan and His Brothers, which was a little more well known than the others in the collection, and Malcochon or The Six in Rain. In 1948 and in 1984, the collection of his poems were anthologized and it came out in 1986. His other epic poem, which he had based on the Iliad and Odyssey, was called Omeros, which came out in 1990, and the famous collection of verse, The Bounty, came out in 1997. His later plays like the Haitian Trilogy in 2001 and Walker and the Ghost Dance in 2002 also gained him much more celebration and international recognition. The two of his famous poems are A Far Cry from Africa and Sea Grapes, which have also been included in the curriculum of many universities in our country. Now, let's look at Dream on Monkey Mountain. And Dream on Monkey Mountain as a play is very visual. So instead of reading it, it's very important that we visualize it as a theatre and a performance. In its opening, the stage direction and the costume needs to be mentioned because a lot of intricate details have been noticed by the critics and the readers by way of stage direction. The stage kind of looks more more empty than a detailed stage direction. There is a moon and a volcanic mountain as the backdrop, and the alternative backdrops are prison cells, country roads, a country market, and the forest. Now, in the beginning, in the prologue, there is a quintessential African dance figure, and very conversely, a top-hatted and frock-coated figure with white gloves. And this top-hatted and frock-coated figure who starts speaking is very interestingly painted half in black and half in white, proclaiming his hybrid existence. Now, in the stage direction, the costumes are very suggestive, because Tigra and Sura, the two convicts, always appear in tattered clothing or mostly half naked. And Makak, the protagonist of the play, looks like the quintessential African figure, the elderly man who is wearing an old cloth around his shoulders and carrying a jute sack. Now, Corporal Lestrade, the other important character of the play, is shown dressed very diligently as an official, a government official. Now, the plot overview is depending on several of these scenes and the prologue and the epilogue. There are 6 scenes in the middle and with a prologue and an epilogue, and the scenes kind of keep shuffling between the reality, or what we perceive to be the reality, and the dream sequences. Now, in the prologue, on a Caribbean island, it is shown a morning but with a full moon. And the moon is often, as by the way of stage direction, moved from the moon to the sun to denote daylight and the night time. And Makak rampages through the marketplace in sheer rage. Now, Corporal Lestrade, a mulatto official, brings in Makak and questions him very methodically to understand the reason of his rampage. Now, Makak says that he does not remember anything about his own self or even his name, and he says that his name is Makak, that means monkey, and he comes from the Monkey Mountain, Sumone Makak. There is a change in scene, and Tigra and Sura don the judge's robes, and the corporal now defends Makak. And Makak claims to have had a dream in which a white woman came to tell him that he was a descendant of the African kings, and this white woman, very interestingly, knows his real name, the name that Makak does not remember anymore. Now, in part 1, scene 1, Makak is back to the Monkey Mountain in his very dilapidated hut, and Mystique, his friend, comes in to look for him. And this companion is flabbergasted because Makak claims to have been seeing a white woman, a white spectral-like presence, which calls him by his real name and urges him to come home. And by home, Makak imagines that this home will be Africa. Now, he asks Mystique to follow him to Africa, which Mystique does without really understanding the implication of Africa, the elusive motherland, the elusive roots. Now, while he is going around the dilapidated hut of Makak, he also finds several things which in a way scares him, because there are things like a spider with an egg sac and a white mask. Now, in this white mask, it's important that we look at it because it might be an allusion to Frantz Fanon's white black skin and white mask. Now, in scene 2, in his hallucinations, Makak becomes a savior of his people, somebody who is committed in ridding the Caribbean populace from the leprosy-like whiteness. Now, he believes that he has become a prophet and a healer, and therefore he walks amongst the common people, healing and tending the sick. And he, as he says, will save his race in part because he's a healer of leprosy. The leprosy, which is almost a confounder of blackness because it turns them into white. Now in scene 3, the scene changes back to Macaque's hallucination as his role as a savior. And many men and women come to testify about the various miracles which Macaque has promised and also delivered. Now, Mystique undergoes a subtle change in his persona because now he wants to exploit his power in this dream. And when confronted by Lestrade and the inspector, Mystique defiantly admits that his identity is something at par as Macaque. And the crowd turns against him, beats him up for impersonating Macaque, and also condemns his life. And in his dying breath, Mystique reconciles with Macaque and also backs away from the population and bids him to go back to the Monkey Mountain. Now in the next part, the first scene, it is again back to the jail cell, the prison cell, where Tigra and Sura confront Lestrade, egging Macaque in to kill, Lestrade. And they also confront Macaque and harangues him because, in their opinion, Macaque allowed the crowd to kill Mystique. Now, Tigra and Sura keeps provoking Macaque, and successfully to a certain extent, they manage to provoke him enough to stab Lestrade and breaking away from the prison. And together, all three of them, they start for Monkey Mountain. But Lestrade apparently is not dead because he rises clutching a towel to his wound and resolves in a vindication, in an effort for revenge, to hunt the lion. Now, the second scene of part 2 is a journey. It's in the middle. And the journey continues through the forest because the felons believe that there are money and possibilities of a new life in Monkey Mountain. They resolve to lose themselves in Macaque's madness and then to survive and later to exploit him. The corporal catches up to them, but he again loses himself in this mad urge to get home, a mad obsession with the ancestral roots. He announces that he loved Africa of his mind, but also the African half of his heritage, and then he apologizes to Macaque and calls him the old father. To him, Africa is elusive because Africa is imaginary. It is not something that they can anyway relate to. Macaque rants about him for being the king of Africa, and in a mock ceremony, the felons, together with Lestrade, they crown him. And they continue their march towards Monkey Mountain with now Macaque in front of their procession. Now, scene 3 is an extremely gorgeous affair because it's in the middle of the forest with a lot of fanfare and tribal settings with gleaming bronze shields and tribal masks, and extremely indigenous setting which shows the colorful Caribbean society. Now, there is a full indigenous ritual in which Lestrade convicts Mystique for now miraculously back to life for abandoning their dream to probably go back to their roots again. The tribes, the members of the tribes, they judge the politician and the world leaders and convicts them to death sentences for the same crime which Mystique, in their opinion, has committed. Now, Macaque is also punished for his false dream because, in their opinion, it's no longer possible to go back to Africa. And in an effort to rid him of his obsession with whiteness, the apparition of a white woman from his dream is beheaded to cure him of his madness. And finally, he announces himself to be cured, to be purged of the dreadful seduction of the white woman and is free to follow his new identity of accepting his hybrid entity. The epilogue again apparently is back to reality because things are normal apparently, and all of them, dead and alive, are back in the prison cells. Makak decides that he will return home to Monkey Mountain, and Lestrade continues his verbal fight with Tigra and Sura and sets Makak free on account of this being his first offense. And finally, Makak remembers his name, which he says is Felix Hubain, and is bailed out by the now again alive Mystique. Now, there are several themes and language tropes which Derek Walcott utilizes together with several imagery which he finds extremely crucial in our understanding the Caribbean persona, the Caribbean consciousness. Now, out of them, the first one is hybridity and the Caribbean identity. Hybridity, what Derek Walcott says and several critics agree, is, as it seems, the default situation of the Caribbean. This is what Caribbean is. It can never now go back to any unitary, monolithic consciousness. R. Radhakrishnan, one of the post-colonial critics, writes about hybridity where he says, I quote, whereas metropolitan hybridity is ensconced comfortably in the heartland of both national and transnational citizenship, post-colonial hybridity is in a frustrating search for constituency and a legitimate political identity. For the West Indian, the inherited Africanness together with the perpetrated Europeanness both feel equally alien. Their identity as a hybrid culture is an acceptance of what has come to be. This is what it is. Though Lestrade is initially ashamed of his hybridity, through him, Walcott himself wrestles psychologically with the contradiction of being white in mind and black in body. Now, if we look at the use of Creole in Derek Walcott's Dream on Monkey Mountain and more of his plays, the use of Creole has been one of the principal signifiers of, well, the hybrid existence of the people. Now, Walcott himself as a literary behemoth finds Creole indispensable. And according to the writings of Edouard Glissant, the possibility of a creative space for the carving out of a Caribbean self between languages is only possible through Creole existence. In this case, we can say the French and the Anglophone, the Francophone and the Anglophone Creole. Now, Creole itself epitomizes the manner in which hybridity can operate as a mode of resistance in the Creole. Now, in the Caribbean. Now, Glissant says that identity can never be a unitary or a monolithic whole. Identity is rhizomatic. It's only a part of the whole. So in a way, there is a problem of intelligibility across national borders. You cannot ever pinpoint where the broad border is. Walcott's solution has been to theatrically dilute Creole forms to arrive at a median. This is a negotiation, not any definition. Because he says that we can only do so using syntaxes from various dialects to articulate a form that would be comprehensible not only to all the people in the region that speak the tone of the language or the voice, but also people everywhere. It is a language of function. It's a language of intelligibility. It's a language which reaches out, does not just confine it in. And he also continues saying in Twilight, the overture of Dream on Monkey Mountain, that our bodies think in one language and move in another. The language of exegesis is English. Now, the other very important trope which Walcott utilizes is the dream narrative. You must have been noticing how there is a flip of the world, as if the world has gone upside down. You never know the reality is real or is it the setting that we look at on stage is suspended in time and space. This is a dream narrative. Anything is possible in this dream narrative. Things can go from extreme probability to extreme improbability, and this technique is rather deliberate because the dream as a representative of the unconscious is a device to explore and lay bare the angst-ridden sensibilities of the hybrid individual. Nothing is real, everything is real then. It allows for the obtrusion of unconscious or the suppressed urges, love-hate impulses, and all other attitudes that have been shaped or distorted by isolation or the memory of ancient grievances, childhood fantasies, as well as mature instincts. The other two themes that we need to look at when we are studying in depth Dream on Monkey Mountain are one, reactionary nativism as this obsession to return to the ancestral roots. Reactionary nativism is a rejection of colonial racist ideology which presupposes the acceptance of this ideology. In a way, it develops mimeticism, which is the form of one's identity in terms of concepts and values ascribed to one by one's oppressor. Reactionary nativism is a kind of obversion of this concept. The protagonist macaque attempts to return home. Where is home? Africa, probably. But then the home is also the Monkey Mountain. The monkey is the mimetic urge of an individual to probably imitate the more powerful, or in Homi Bhabha's words, to also mime and imitate to survive. The mottled existence in the background, if you can be mottled enough to not being seen, it's a trope of survival. Now, macaque in the play starts for the memory of Africa, which for him is the roots of his people, his culture. He's followed by his band dreaming the same dream of reclaiming home. And they finally realize their position as the hybrid individual, miming and appropriating their dual inheritance and illuminating the truth of their existence. Now, in this regard, we also need to look back to Marcus Garvey and his Back to Africa movement, which in the 20th century was a civil rights movement and a social in a way, revolution, because they in America attempted to get together the African Americans and tried to emigrate them back to Africa. They also had purchased several steamships and had also hired African American crew which were committed to take ship full of people to take them back to Africa in a way to reclaim their inheritance. Now, if you're looking at some of the characters of Dream on Monkey Mountain, beside macaque, there is the most colorful and in a way angst-ridden character of Corporal Lestrade. Now, Lestrade, before his conversion into the Dream of Monkey Mountain, he had conceived of himself as a white man because he very rudely dubs all the other members of the play around him as niggers and several other racist epithets. Now, he's a corporal and an officer of British rule, and he insists that he asserts that he had the white man's law to uphold. In the forest, in the heart of darkness, that experiences a kind of conversion, and that is where he acknowledges himself to be mulatto, an offspring of interracial union. And he also acknowledges the blackness of his identity, which hitherto he had rejected. Now, Lestrade very interestingly moves from one extreme of being quote-unquote the foot-licking servant of the marble law, the white law, to the other extreme where his previous hatred of blackness is now replaced by an equally violent hatred for the white. He provokes Macaque to behead the white woman and the spectral-like presence, and does it himself finally, trying to excuse his violence as a necessary step to eliminate the cause which confounds blackness. Now, Macaque, the protagonist of the play, is the embodiment of a more instinctive and a more primitive and a less rational being. His identity, his understanding of the world, his evaluation of himself and of others, all have been determined by white perceptions and white ideas which serve to support racial hierarchies. Now, Walcott, through him, speaks about racial despair, by which he seems to mean that the sense of complete human denigration which drives Macaque mad is something to do with the sense of being rootless and being obsessed, being committed to trace back that elusive root, which now, at the present scenario of multicultural and multi-layered individualism, is really difficult. Now, some of the phrases of Dream on Monkey Mountain, like the one in 218, keeps on asking for home. And this home is always elusive, because when asked that where is your home, Macaque answers Sumone Macaque, that is in Monkey Mountain. And it is also asked whether it's in Africa, and he insists no, it's Monkey Mountain. And then he conversely is looking for the place or the home back with the African forefathers in Africa. In his delusions, Macaque's first project is to return to Africa, and not only that, to also trace back his home and his roots. The word reiterates itself quite a lot of times in the play. When Macaque begins to go mad, he hallucinates the visit of a white woman, and she is almost an embodiment of the seduction of the white culture, because she calls out by his name, his real name. And in this way, it's almost an attempt to restore to him his culture, his sense of ethnic and racial connection. His romantic nativism tends to be a romantic naturalism, as well as it's related to his new self-image as the king of jungle, the lion. There would be the additional modalities of the lesson, where there would be a section on self-assessment where you can test your understanding of the play. And if you are interested more to look at the topic, there is also a section on for further reference. So in this lesson, we have seen how looking for indigeneity or the national or cultural identity is difficult in Caribbean, because it's very difficult to find a pan-Caribbean identity or consciousness. And in Dream of Monkey Mountain, firstly, we looked at how Derek Walcott, being a member of an interracial family, is in a way looking into the consciousness of an hybrid individual who is looking for the way home, without recognizing the fact that it can never be the home which he, in a misplaced attempt to trace back to Africa. Now, further, we have also looked into the use of Creole, the use of ancestral root reactionary nativism, and the concept of hybrid identity, how it can be read in any multicultural context, and how Dream on Monkey Mountain is still relevant in a multiracial and a multicultural society, a multi-ethnic society as ours. Thank you.